Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
And I'm Megan.
Let's shake our gree, Megan.
Oh, I've got the sack.
I've got the raccoon bones.
All right. And I'm bringing you part 2 of the Shanda Scherer case.
Part 2. I'm ready.
And right before I dive in, I said that I wasn't going to just like shout out people because lots of people have requested it. But one person requested this more than once.
Okay.
And just to show her some love, because she literally was like, hey, did you forget me? Like, were you going to cover this? Because she really wants it covered. So I want to shout out Rosa Barbosa Clark and her lovely girlfriend, Talisa, and they have been waiting for this to be covered.
Oh, thank you guys
thanks for
listening.
the suggestion and for listening. And we promised that we would do it. And even though it's months later,
well,
I'm finally ready to give it to you.
Yeah, that happens. I'm working on one that one of our beautiful Patreons sent me the books for actually a year ago, October 2022. Right. I finally got to read them and also, putting the episodes together to do it justice. So it just happens. We're not going anywhere, guys.
No,
so
we'll get to them.
We will get to them. Don't worry.
We will. All right. So picking up, I had just left you with the 4 perpetrators in this case heading over to Shanda Scherer's.
Yes.
And Hope has just got Shanda into Lori's car, and they are heading toward the witch's castle. So she still doesn't know that Melinda Lovelace, who's obviously scary to her because she's been threatening her anyway and doesn't want her and Amanda together. She doesn't know she's in the car, or even that she has any type of a connection to these girls at all, because Shanda doesn't know any of the young ladies that came to her house.
Right.
And again, we're not going to talk about why she would go and do this, because she's 12 years old and she's an adolescent.
And this is where I'm going to go into work mode and desensitize myself and separate myself from the reality of this.
Everything that I'm going to tell you now is a trigger alert.
Yes.
I explained in episode 1 what we found. We know the result, the end result for Shanda, but listening to how this is done is triggering for anybody. So if you can't listen to this, I highly suggest that you fast forward maybe even 20 minutes or so, because it's all bad.
Yep.
So after leaving Shanda's home, her dad's home, Melinda does end up jumping up from the back seat where she had been hiding and waiting with this knife. She pulls Shanda's hair back from the front and puts the knife to her neck. So while little Shanda is, sitting here, obviously scared, her hair's pulled back, there's a knife to her neck, she starts taunting her. She tells her things like, you should have listened. You should have stayed away from Amanda. I will fucking kill you if you don't admit that you stole Amanda from me. And as she's terrorizing her with these threats, they're driving to this witch's castle. And Shanda would know Witch's Castle, and it's meant to be scary. It's this local teen hangout. There's this legend, as towns will have, right, that the house was once owned by 9 witches, and that the townspeople had burned that down that house to get rid of the witches, and they died inside. So it's scary. So they pull Shanda out of the vehicle at this point. They've got to Witch's Castle. And I think all that's left of this is really some kind of dilapidation of buildings, but there's a fireplace left there, one of those spooky chimneys out of the ground thing. I can
picture it perfectly.
So you picture this and this 12-year-old who's being held at knife point by girls, most of whom she doesn't know, but one she does, who's threatened her in the past, and put yourself with how fucking terrified you are at this point. So they bind her arms and her legs with rope. Melinda starts to taunt her about her pretty hair and how would it look if she cut it off. Then she takes Shanda's rings off of her hands, her little rings that she's wearing, and she hands them to the other girls like little gifts. It's like she's giving away this girl's rings in front of her. And then she grabs a t-shirt and she lights it on fire in front of Shanda. And then she freaks out because she's worried, oh shit, somebody passing in cars might see this fire. So she puts the shirt out that she lit on fire, but obviously is threatening her and trying to scare her. So she's in tears. She's fearful for everything, for her life. Shanda is trying to respond, right? She's trying to respond to the girls at this point in time, begging them, responding to the questions that she's being asked. You know, you stole her, admit it, you bitch, those type of things.
Yeah. And at this point, do we wonder, because the two girls, Tony and
Hope,
who do not know, have no connections, do you think that they're too scared to exit this because of now the behaviors that they've seen from Melinda?
Maybe at this point. I'm going to have you consider that, and everybody else when we hear the full story.
Okay.
So Loveless, Melinda has convinced the other girls then at this point, because of maybe just too public of the location. It is a local teen hangout. People do come there, and she's just created a little watch fire, either inadvertently or didn't realize it at the time that it could be potentially dangerous for her plight here. She convinces the girls to take Shanda to a more remote location where no one is going to be around. So it was reported, at least at first, that the other three girls assumed Melinda Loveless was simply going to scare Cher into breaking up with Amanda Hevron. So I call bullshit on some of it, because I think it was made clear by other statements. We're gonna kill a little girl tonight, those type of things.
Yes.
But again,
and now we've escalated to this point. You've bound her,
right? But using an adolescent brain here at this point, in terms of where they are, is it still possible that they think this is just a scare thing? Okay, so I do find it hard to believe, and I know that you do as well. But all of the girls, Hope, Lori, and Melinda, start taunting Shanda then, saying things like, "You don't look so hot now, do you?" And because they're, hurting her. And I bet you'll leave Amanda alone now. Okay. So they're still, they're doing this taunt thing.
They're jumping in, and they don't even know this girl or Amanda.
Right. So they get into the car because they're going to leave and go someplace more remote. During the car ride, Shanda is continuing to beg them to please take her back home. Melinda Loveless ordered her to slip off of her bra. So Shanda takes her bra off, which she then hands over to Hope Rippey, who slid off her own bra and replaced it with Shanda Shearer's while steering the car.
Okay.
Okay. Do we like this behavior?
No.
It's some people will say still just kind of taunting, harassing her kind of thing. Well, they become a little bit lost in their drive to get out to someplace more remote. So they stop at a gas station and they cover Shanda up in a blanket. Lori Tackett goes inside to ask for directions. And Tony Lawrence calls a boy she knows in Louisville and chats to him on the phone for several minutes to ease her worries. And never mentions when she's on the phone to this boy that she's called what she's involved in or what they're doing, or that Shanda's been abducted and is in the car. So keep this in mind. She takes the time to call somebody here.
Okay.
This is Lawrence. She's
had an opportunity to tell them everything that's going on.
That you've kidnapped somebody.
Yes.
So the girls return to the car, but again become lost, and they pull up to another gas station. And there, Tony Lawrence and Hope Rippey spot a couple of boys and talk to them again before getting back in the car and leaving again.
Yet another chance to tell somebody.
I'm telling you this for a reason. This is a second opportunity that they had to let somebody know what was going on. And this time it wasn't on the phone where you could presume, say, maybe you were worried, oh, they heard the phone call, I can't get away from this. They were actually at a second gas station having contact with a couple of people that could have helped them.
Yep.
They get back in the car and leave again. And sometime later, they arrive at the edge of some woods that was actually pretty near Lori Tackett's home in Madison. So they're close by Lori's house, but they're still in a remote location.
Okay.
Some people have described this location as like a trash dump that's near a logging road, and that it's very densely, heavily forested. Okay. So lots of trees here. This is where they make Shanda strip off all of her clothing. Melinda begins to punch Shanda and actually grabs her face and slams her knee into Shanda's head and face, which caused massive bleeding. And Shanda, per her mom, had recently had braces put on. This made the assault particularly painful and of course caused that really aggressive bleeding. And head and mouth injuries bleed so terribly.
Yes.
Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence actually stayed in the car during this part, is what is explained.
Okay. I still don't, they're dead to me.
I understand.
I still can't.
I understand.
I don't care if they are in the car.
And Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett are beating Shanda up. They're beating her. They tie her up. And this is the part where we aggressively have the first attempt at murder because Melinda tries to slit her throat.
Okay.
The knife was too dull. So then Melinda and Lori try to strangle Shanda. Hope Rippey comes out of the car to hold Shanda down.
Okay. And now you are also just
complicit.
Culpable. Yep.
While Lori and Melinda take turns stabbing Shanda in the chest and in one account, possibly her feet also.
Oh my God.
Because there were injuries to her feet. We just don't know for sure when it happened.
Sure.
Then they strangle her with a rope. She was unconscious, according to the girls, in a later interview when they put Shanda in the truck. All of the girls believed that she was dead at this point.
Okay. I'm going to choose to believe that her soul has exited her body at this point in time, knowing what the inevitable result was so that she doesn't consciously know what's happening. That's what I'm going to choose to believe.
I hope so, but I'm going to tell you some things that are going to break your heart then.
I mean, her human can still be there, but not her soul.
Yeah. So Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett told the other two girls that she was dead. So they all believe she's dead at this point. I don't know if Melinda and Lori actually thought that they had succeeded in killing her at this point, but regardless, they tell everybody that the other girls that she's dead. So then it's just so fucking ridiculously psychopathic. They continue to cruise. They drive around for a while. Then they go to Lori Tackett's house to get cleaned up and they drink some sodas and are enjoying themselves.
Let's just
in the
have
house.
a Pepsi. And isn't she in the trunk?
She's in the trunk
at this point in time.
And at this point, shit goes south for them because they hear Shanda screaming in the trunk and realize she's still alive.
Oh my God.
While they're in Lori's house.
The fact that she could scream.
Yes. Well, when they heard her screaming, Lori Tackett goes out with a paring knife. Okay?
Oh my God.
You guys, a paring knife is a short-bladed, straight blade fixed instrument that you use to peel an apple skin or fruit.
Yep.
And she stabs her several more times and comes back in covered in blood.
The sociopathicness of all of this, you can't even claim that it was just this loss of control out in the wooded area.
So
this is
intentional.
Multiple times. Time in between attacks.
So intentional. They are keeping her there. They've not attempted to dispose of her, to get her help.
Right.
She goes out and stabs her with a paring knife. And what kind of a moron thinks that a paring knife is going to finish off the job with stabbing? You're just torturing her at this point.
And that's the point.
Was
that's
she
exactly what she wanted to do.
I think so too. I think that this was more at this point intentional torture, but she comes back inside, apparently thinking that she has killed her again, but I call bullshit. I think she just wants to stab her into submission.
Yes.
She washes up and she gets out her rune stones to tell the girls' future. So now they're going to tell their futures and play occult witches here. Literally, they're playing teen slumber party games.
Yes. Yep.
I'm just waiting for them to play light as a feather, stiff as a board now.
Absolutely. This to me, this is the worst case, the worst true crime case for me personally.
When you're talking about teenage killers?
Yes.
Yes.
It's just scary. It's so frightening.
At 2:30 a.m., Lawrence and Rippey stay behind. And Lori Tackett, so they're at Tackett's house, but those two girls stay behind while Lori Tackett and Melinda Loveless go cruising. Shanda starts to make noises, and trigger alert, what they're hearing from the trunk is some light crying and gurgling noises.
Yeah.
So Lori Tackett stops the car, and when they open it, Shanda sits up. I don't know whether this is voluntary or involuntary. She's covered in blood. Her eyes are rolling back in her head. Huge trigger alert. She was unable to form words other than the word mommy. I'm sorry. Lori Tackett then beats her with a tire iron until she goes silent. And an even bigger trigger alert, sorry. At some point in time, she does claim later that she beat her until she felt what she thought was her head caving in. There were some reports that Shanda was sexually assaulted, as I indicated to you before, including sodomy by the tire iron. We don't know for sure still who did that, but most of the speculation later is that it would have been Lori that completed the sodomy with the tire iron. And this is where I think it happened. And some people had stated that perhaps it was after, but we know now from the autopsy report, based off of the bleeding and the state of the rectum, that
her heart was still pumping.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. It was still pumping blood through her body.
So the sexual assault, and what I'm going to consider a mobile assault, because this is mobile, this is happening in a vehicle and stopping at multiple places, with the tire iron, went on and off for 2 hours, for at least 2 hours, while the two went joyriding. So they're joyriding and then stopping to beat this baby in the trunk. So Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett then finally go back to Lori's house just before dawn to clean up. Hope Rippey asks about Shanda at this point, and Lori Tackett describes all of the torture that they've inflicted on her like she's bragging.
Well, she was reliving it because she's that sick.
Yes. This conversation that they're having, and just before dawn, so what are we talking, maybe like 5 a.m. or so, actually wakes up Lori Tackett's mom, who yells at them for being out late and tells her, you need to take these girls home. But instead, they drive to dispose of Shanda. So the girls open the trunk to stare at her, like when they're at the house. They've left the house, Tackett home, and they're getting ready to get in the car, but they show her what's in the trunk. And this is one of the other points where one of the girls says to her that you're not looking so hot now. You're not so pretty now.
Oh my God.
Because the whole thing is Melinda is so devastatingly jealous of the relationship with Amanda Hevron. This is a beautiful 12-year-old. She's very pretty. She's just so jealous that she's focusing on these things. She's dying in this trunk and she's beat to hell. And her response is, you don't look so hot now, do you? So in showing Hope Rippey her handiwork, Toni Lawrence is obviously there as well. She doesn't want to look at the body. She's obviously struggling with this. And so
finally a sense of some humanity.
She hasn't been there for much of it. She stayed in the car during the original. I'm going to give her this. And she knows everything that's going on, but she's not going and driving around. And then when they go out to, see their handiwork before they leave, Hope looks, but Toni does not, Lawrence does not want to look.
But so let's point out, Toni and Hope stayed back. Okay, at 2:30 in the morning, they stayed back. The parents were home. They could have went to the parents, woke the parents up, let them know. When the mom came in and said, why are you up so late? You need to take these girls home.
Yes.
When she didn't want to look at the body, she could have ran back in the house and told the parents, but fucking no, she didn't. So,
and this is Lori Tackett's parents. Why didn't Hope and Toni call their own parents or leave?
Could have done that too.
Just fucking leave.
There were so many fucking options.
Leave. Something bad just happened. You think a girl's dying or has at least been kidnapped. And the people that are scary, who've perpetrated most of this at this point, have left.
Yes.
You are free.
You're free.
You are free to go do something.
Yep.
Frankly, most people believe they had a pact.
Yes.
That no one was going to tell.
Yes.
And whether it's because they're adolescents and whether it's because they are scared of the other two sociopaths, they don't do it. They don't do the right thing. No. They don't do the right thing. And at what point is not doing the right thing so criminal that you're guilty of murder?
Yep.
And that's what we're going to... Right here.
It's right here.
I agree. So she gets told to start the car. And every time that Shanda started to scream, they told her she was to rev the engine to cover it up.
Oh, my God.
So when Lori Tackett opens the trunk, Hope Rippey notices a bottle. And this is Hope doing something awful right now, okay? Hope, who had stayed behind. She notices a bottle of Windex in the trunk next to Shanda Shear, so she picks it up and starts to spray her with the cleaning liquid.
Fuck?
This bleeding, dying girl, she sprays her. The Windex starts to fizzle in Shanda Shear's wounds, and somehow she manages the strength to sit up again. Like whether she's doing this voluntarily or involuntarily at this point, she's trying to fucking survive.
Yes.
She's alive and she's trying to survive, Charnell.
I cannot imagine living through this. I can't.
No. Torture. One of the worst torture cases I've ever seen.
This is like worse than medieval torture.
It is.
For fuck's sake.
Her body is covered in blood. Her eyes are pure white because they're like rolled into the back of her head, considering the pain. And even if she was conscious at this point, Shanda begins to sway back and forth while Lori Tackett's talking to her, and she says nothing in response.
Yeah.
And again, I believe there's also a point in time here where evidence suggests this could be when she was sodomized by the tire iron also.
Okay.
So it either happened before or at this point with the tire iron.
Okay.
But we know that it happened at one of those 2 points.
Right. Again, points to, I'm going to say her soul was gone from her body and it was just human brain operating.
And I hope and pray that for her family's sake as well. I'm sure they've prayed this multiple times as well, hearing and knowing the story that was the case.
Yep.
Well, Lori Tackett's mom yells out the door at this point
Oh my God.
and Tackett slams the trunk down on Cher's head.
Right.
So as the sun is rising on Saturday, January 11th, over this night of torture, all 4 of the girls pile in the car and go to get gas near Madison High School. They filled a bottle with gasoline, and then they drive out to this rural area along Lemon Road. So they drove north of Madison, past the Jefferson Proving Ground to this Lemon Road that's off Route 421, and this is a place that Hope Rippey is familiar with. So Shanda's badly hurt, tortured, dying, bleeding profusely, but still alive. And they know she's still alive because they just tried to slam her back into the trunk and slammed her head in there. So the car stops and Tony Lawrence refuses to get out of the car. Okay. Lori and Hope wrap Shanda up in a blanket and carry her to the field by the gravel road. At this point in time, and this is how it's stated, Lori made Hope pour gasoline on Shanda. It doesn't say where Melinda is at this point.
Okay, I was going to
But
ask.
she's there.
Yeah.
I
So
do
we
not
don't know
believe
if she's inside the car or outside.
I 100% believe she was outside of the car
Yeah.
and watching this.
Yeah.
I believe.
If Tony is the only one that's documented as staying in the
Yes.
car, then she's outside the car.
And here's is part of why. So Lori Tackett lights the match and sets Shanda on fire. All of the girls get back in the car and start to pull away.
Keep in mind, Lori is not the one that had the jealous problems with this girl.
But she was friends with Melinda and she's a sociopath.
Yeah. She is the scariest one here.
I think she is, but Melinda's evil.
Yes.
They start to pull away. Melinda gets nervous and she tells Lori Tackett, turn back around. She wanted to make sure that the body was burning. She got scared that when they lit her on fire and like we're leaving, that the body was still going to be there.
Scared, or did she want to watch it burn?
Maybe both. Because what she does then is Melinda then grabs the bottle with the remaining gasoline, goes over to Cher's body. And it's described, super big trigger alert, guys. She stood staring momentarily as Cher curled herself up into the fetal position or was responding to being on fire.
Which is actually a neurological response.
Response. As her tongue is darting in and out of her mouth. And then after she felt that she'd seen enough, as she's obviously dying, she pours the remaining gasoline on her corpse and runs back to the car. Melinda thought it was funny, the manner in which Shanda was dying, curling up that involuntary fetal position.
And there's an actual scientific name for it that I'm too traumatized right now to even bring it to my conscious awareness. But if you're a true crime fan, you've heard it time and time again. I just can't remember right now what it's called.
She describes it to the other girls as she's dying, exactly what's happening.
That's
And this just goes along with what we find in the autopsy, that clearly Shanda Cher was alive still when she was burned. And you know that from that trauma response. It's the curling up. It's the arms reaching up above. It's the curled fingers. Your own body is trying to get away from being incinerated when you can't move and you're bound.
Yes. I'm going to look up the name now because it's going to bother me. But carry on.
Thank you.
But so she thought that neurological response was funny.
Yes, she thought it looked funny.
Okay.
And if I couldn't tell you that things don't get worse, I would be lying, because they do things that are even more sick, okay?
Yeah.
So she's ecstatic. Melinda Lovelace is ecstatic now in the car because her plan has worked and Shanda is finally out of her life and Amanda's going to be all hers. And Lori obviously seemed to enjoy herself during the crime in general. And at least during the night's events, Charnell, Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence must not have been too shaken up because they've had several opportunities during the night now to summon help. and have chosen not to.
Exactly.
And there were even moments that they were alone. Remember when the other two went joyriding and Shanda was mutilated, but she was still alive in the trunk?
It's the boxer stance.
Boxer stance.
Is how it's described.
Yes, which is exactly what has been described.
Yes.
Thank you. The girls go at 9:30 a.m. So what? A few hours after this, they've just been joyriding to a McDonald's. And I don't even want to say this, but I'm going to. Trigger alert. They started laughing at one point that Shanda's body looked like one of the sausages they were eating.
Oh my God.
They're sick, Charnell. And I'm telling you these things because so many people are trying to make one or more of them less culpable because of their involvement. But I want you to know what they did.
Yes. And then the things that were said and this is not somebody who was just along for the ride and a victim of the circumstance that they found themselves in. They were, a part of this. They were carrying on with laughing about this. They were making statements like that. These are not people who feel remorse.
No. And, or trying to get away. But then shit starts to happen. This is where, the plan's kind of going to unfold. So Tony Lawrence actually calls a friend and tells a friend who I could not find the name of about the murder. So Lori drops off both Lawrence and Rippy, so Hope and Tony, at their homes. And she finally returns to her house with Melinda Loveless. Loveless tells Amanda Heverin, her girlfriend or ex-girlfriend,
right, that
they've killed Shanda. And then they make arrangements to pick her up later. Now, Amanda's going to insist that she didn't believe her, but she was told. They did tell her that they had killed her girlfriend, and then they make arrangements to pick her up later that day.
Okay.
So a friend of Melinda Lovelace's, a Crystal Wathen, or Wathen, she comes over to Melinda's house, and they tell her what happened. Then those three girls, Lori Tackett, this other girl who's apparently an after the fact here, and I never hear anything about whether or not she's charged with being an accessory after the fact or anything, but she is involved. They go over and pick up Amanda Heverin, and they take her back to Melinda's home, and they tell her the story. Wow. So both Amanda and Wathen, the girl, they're reluctant to believe the story.
Well, so I can kind of see why.
Hey, I killed your little fucking girlfriend.
And this is how we did it over a span of an entire night. And she stayed alive that long. And it's hard for me to believe right now.
I know. So being reluctant to believe them, Lori Tackett and Melinda they want them to know. They want her to know what they did. So Lori shows them the trunk of the car.
Oh, my God. Okay, at this point, it's happened.
There's bloody handprints. Yeah. Shanda's socks are still there. Mm-hmm. And apparently, according to reports, Amanda Heverin is horrified and asked to be taken home.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So when they pull up in front of her house, Melinda Loveless kisses Amanda and tells her she loves her and pleads with her not to tell anyone.
This is disgusting.
And Amanda Heverin promised that she wouldn't tell anyone, and she goes in her house. And neither of those two girls reported to the authorities what happened.
Yeah. See, okay. I have problems. Yep.
I mean, where are we with this?
Yeah. I'm sorry, but you are an accessory at this point in time. You saw evidence. You go and tell.
Amanda insists that she's a victim in this still, if you watch the videos.
Okay. Well, I'm here to call her fucking bullshit.
You were just shown evidence and proof. And here's the thing, too. How old is Amanda? She's 16. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She is 16 years old.
Right. She's not 12.
No, she's 14. I'm sorry. She's 14 years old.
Right, because Loveless is 16. Okay.
Yes, she's 14 years old. But
she still, you just saw bloody handprints. You go and tell an adult.
This is the same girl that insists that when there were being letters sent to her that Melinda was going to kill her, that she told her dad or told a youth prosecutor, but then she doesn't report this.
Right. No, sorry.
In one interview that I saw, Amanda is insistent, Heverin, that she did tell her dad. And if that's the case, I think it was Dr. Phil. He actually says to her, so your dad didn't report it?
Right.
Like, come on, girl.
Right.
So at this point, Shanda Shira's father, Stephen, has noticed that his daughter's nowhere to be found. Yeah. So this is early on January 11th. He realizes his daughter has left the house, snuck out of the house. She's only 12. He's terrified. He phones neighbors, he phones friends, and he calls Jackie, his ex-wife, and Shanda's mom. And at 1:45 p.m., they met together and went to the Clark County Sheriff's Office and filed a missing person report. At 8:20 p.m. that night, A hysterical Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence go to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office with their parents to tell a horrific story.
Mm-hmm.
Both of the girls gave very rambling statements identifying Shanda, in quotes, as some victim. And then they start naming the two other girls involved as best that they could and are describing to the police events of the previous night. So you can imagine Jefferson County Sheriff's Office is like, what in the hell is going on here?
Absolutely.
You've got these two apparently hysterical and scared girls. Sheriff Shipley has received at this point a missing persons report from Clark County.
Mm-hmm.
Shanda Shearer, age 12, had been reported missing by her parents some 8 hours earlier. He felt his heart sink as he read the description.
Yep.
Blonde hair, 5 foot tall, around 100 pounds. And that description perfectly matched the Jane Doe that he had from earlier.
Yep.
He starts the paperwork to get warrants then for the arrest of Lori Tackett and Melinda Lovelace based off of the statements made by Lawrence and Rippey. So the investigators are rushing to get paperwork in order and may receive word that the teeth of the victim did match the dental records of Shanda Shearer, because irrespective of them describing what had happened and knowing that it's that person, they had to positively identify the Vic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Has the body been found at this point?
Yes,
Okay.
it had been found in the early morning hours.
Okay, so the same day. I mean,
Yes.
really, this was like
Within
right
hours.
after.
We know.
God.
So they had left. This had happened just before dawn.
Yeah.
And then those hunters went out, and I have it here.
Yeah.
If I go back, I think that this is around 10:45.
Yeah.
10:55 a.m. is when they call the Foley brothers, find this body and call the sheriff's department.
Okay, so we're just talking a mere matter of hours
Yes.
that the body was found. Okay.
You got it. No real apparent attempt to hide the body. And pardon me for being crass, but what dumb shit teenage girls, if you're going to kill somebody, that's what you do is put them in a field out in the open. It's some type of it almost makes you wonder if it's sacrificial in nature with these weird occult things that they thought that they were involved in.
Yeah, yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't one say that they did that so that she would be found and so that it wasn't a secret or something like that? Maybe I'm thinking about another case, but
I think,
and I just think that's bullshit. I think they just didn't think it through.
Well, Hope Rippey's the one that had maybe if you want to do an order of culpability, the second least culpable.
Okay.
I don't, and just for the record,
Maybe
that
some sort of a conscience.
it
as
did
a
make
human.
me feel nauseous when I just said that. By the
Yeah.
way, she knew this area, and so perhaps that was the case. But anyway, they were trying to. Why the burning then?
Right.
If you wanted to be found, she was dead, she was dying, drop her in the field then.
know.
They
Why-
didn't want to get caught. She had to die.
Yeah. And I truly believe that they enjoyed every moment of the torture. And burning is just one more way you can torture somebody.
Right. So, no matter which direction the case was going to go at this point, Charnell, the hardest part was right here. And that's Sheriff Shipley notifying Shanda's parents.
Absolutely.
So after what I'm going to call an inter-county investigation, because there's so many different agencies working on this, Shipley contacts the Clark County Sheriff's Office, and he was finally able to match the body to the Sheriff missing person report. Tony is explaining the events of January 10th and 11th and is confirming at this point in time. They Hope was there too, but they say it's Tony that really confirms that the person that they killed and found dead on Lemon Road was Shanda.
Okay.
So Shanda's parents, Jackie and Vo and Steve Scherer, they were excited when the police contacted them.
Oh God. Well, of course, because they think they've just found their runaway teen or whatever.
They are certain that their little girl had been found and that they would be reunited with her. But as soon as they saw the look on Detective Henry's face, they knew that something awful had happened. But there was no way they could have imagined how awful at this point.
Absolutely not. Right.
There's zero way. There's no
I'm still
right
having
way.
a hard time
I know.
understanding everything that happened to this little girl.
One, there's no right way to tell a parent that their child's dead. But two, how in the hell do you explain to them that your child has been brutally tortured and murdered?
I don't know. Did this take him? Did he go on to a nice, peaceful career
God,
after
I hope
this?
so. I didn't look, but I hope he's retired on a lake someplace.
Me too. Oh, Lord.
So it didn't matter how eloquent or sensitive he would have been. The impact remains the same.
Of
And
course.
when he told them that Shanda was dead, Jackie became hysterical.
Of course.
So Melinda Lovelace and Lori Tackett are arrested on January 12th, and they are charged at that point simply because you have to arrest on something with first-degree murder. So the bulk of the evidence for that specific arrest warrant has come from the statements made by Hope and Tony, It's almost 2 a.m. by the time Sheriff Shipley and Detective Henry acquired arrest warrants for Tackett and Lovelace, okay? So we're into the next morning. Lori Tackett's car had actually been spotted at Melinda's mom's house. So it was there that they decided to serve the warrants. They're still having fucking slumber parties.
Yep.
They're still
with
hanging out.
It's a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And they're just hanging out.
When the two police officers knocked on the door, Melinda's mother, Margie, answered. Remember, she's been fucking traumatized in the past, right?
Right.
They quickly explained why they were there and asked her where the girls were. Margie tells them the girls are upstairs, so the investigators make their way up to Melinda's room. When they enter the room, Melinda and Lori are in bed, sound asleep, sleeping away. Like nothing happened,
like
no
they
remorse.
Didn't murder and torture a 12-year-old.
Yep. Detective Henry, actually had to yell for the two of them to get up, to wake up.
Oh, my God.
As they woke up.
Well, yeah, I bet they were exhausted.
Oh, it's very tiring what they did. He informs them as they're waking up that they're both being arrested on charges of murder, and then they're let out of the house in handcuffs and transported to the police station where they're booked and jailed. So the prosecution in this case, Charnell, they immediately, and by immediately I mean, within days, it wasn't like right then.
Yeah.
They did at some point declare their intention to try both Lovelace and Tackett as adults at this point.
Okay.
And Tony Lawrence and Hope Rippey were charged shortly after. So I'm going to explain some of this in the process and how it happened.
Okay.
So as investigators were questioning both Melinda Lovelace and Lori Tackett, they're actually having this interview, as one would, before transporting them to the Indiana Circuit Court in Madison. This is where the single count of murders entered against each of them, and counsel is appointed to represent them. In a different hearing, or a separate hearing, as will often happen, you have to have a hearing on cases when you're going to charge juveniles as adults. Now, in Michigan, there are certain cases that are automatic waiver cases. Mm-hmm. And in an automatic waiver, you don't have to have a hearing. You can just simply charge them as an adult. Other cases are discretion, where you have to have a hearing in front of a judge to decide whether or not they can be tried as adults. Indiana must be different than Michigan because they actually had one of these hearings. Okay. It didn't seem to be automatic. They had to make the request. So Judge Ted Todd ends up doing the waiver, and he waives the girls from the juvenile court system and determines that they would be tried as adults.
Yep.
Following the hearing, the prosecutor in this case, who I do like, I know he gets a lot of flack through this because of some of the plea deals and stuff that are made, and people have some criticisms, but he doesn't do a bad job. And that's just my opinion. As a judge, I'm sorry. I watch attorneys, I see what they do, and I don't think he does a bad job here.
Okay.
He speaks with Hope Rippey's attorney regarding her involvement. So you're getting the squealers. You got to talk to the people and see what you can work out.
Yep.
Sometimes, and I know no one's going to like this, the only way that you can get the full and absolute story is to make some offers.
I know. Right. We've seen it time and time again, but also this is just the way that the justice system works.
It is.
And without that, how many cases would have gone unsolved?
Perhaps.
Okay. So
the media are swarming all over. We've made national headlines at this point in time. The public is in shock. They want quick justice for Shanda. The media is all over the fact that there are 4 teenage girl murderers. Mm-hmm. Okay. And apparently both Lovelace and Tackett at this point had confessed to at least 3 people. And 2 of those people apparently made statements to Shipley and to Henry, the police officers at this point. But note that Amanda Heverin isn't one of them.
Correct.
So the facts are starting to fall in place. Investigators are piecing together what happened. The facts as I've presented them to you for the most part. Each of the girls is trying to downplay their own role in the murder. Because now it's point fingers and every girl for themselves.
Yep. Our little pact is done.
Most of their statements did match. And the prosecutor, he was pretty confident in his case at this point. 1 or more of these girls is going to go down for murder. There is obviously going to happen.
Right.
There's no way that Shanda could have been brought back at this point, but he was determined, the prosecutor was, to get justice. So a picture based upon the girls' confessions, statements, and evidence uncovered was beginning to emerge of Shanda's last hours of her life, which would make that possible. For several months, the prosecutors and defense attorneys actually didn't release any information about the case, only giving the media the statements that were made by Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence. So they aren't disclosing all the other stuff that they have. So Shanda's autopsy, which I talked to you a little bit about at the very beginning of the case, did reveal that her official cause of death was smoke inhalation, meaning that she was burned alive. You know, they can never actually say burned alive, but it was smoke inhalation that caused her to die.
But think about that. Everything she had been through and what she actually died from was smoke.
Yeah.
That is incredible to me.
I think it's one of those things where any and or all of the injuries that happened could have caused her death.
Eventually.
But the first thing that caused the death ultimately was that she was burned and that she inhaled that smoke and died.
Yep.
If she wouldn't have, died from that, it could have been any one of the other injuries.
Absolutely.
Was there some more than was she slowly bleeding out from her neck
and
from
her
it being
head
slit?
was caved in.
Was correct. Was it the brain injury that was there? Did she have a stroke? Did she have what? I mean,
it's just the smoke is the fastest.
That was the one. So March 15th of 1992 is when Guy Townsend charges Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence. He charges them with
2 months.
Yep.
Okay.
Murder, arson, battery with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery, criminal confinement, and intimidation.
Okay.
During their arraignment, the judge waves both of them into the adult system as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a appearance where they're taken to Jefferson County Jail. They haven't that court appearance. I'm so sorry. And then they're taken to Jefferson County Jail to await trial. Later that same afternoon, Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett were brought before the judge, and they were charged then with 7 additional crimes to the first-degree murder that they were originally charged with, including, which was different than the other girls, child molestation and criminal deviant conduct. Mm-hmm. So they were charged with all the same things: murder, arson, battery, aggravated battery, criminal confinement, intimidation, but on theirs was added child molestation and criminal deviance.
Yep, as we got more information.
Yes.
Sure.
Well, we know that the sexual assault with the tire iron occurred during a time frame that it was those 2 girls most likely together.
Right.
So, and of course, they described their crimes to the other 2 girls at some point. So they're singing like birdies, right? Mm-hmm. So a month later, though, he also tacks on in April an additional count of felony murder against Tackett and Loveless as well. I like that because to prove murder, you just have to show that it was in commission of a felony. So you don't even have to intend to murder the person. If you committed a felony during that and someone dies, you're guilty of felony murder.
Okay.
And no one's really explained that to the public, so let me explain to you. First degree murder, you have to show intent. Yep. And just in case they were going to say, we were only intending to beat or torture her, we didn't really want her to die, the fact they committed these felonies and the kidnapping and that she ultimately died as a result takes that mens rea right off the table. You're fucking guilty of felony murder because you were committing a felony when she died.
Yep. Okay. Love that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So on April 22nd, Tony Lawrence, she's our least culpable, please know I'm using air quotes, accepts a plea deal with the state in exchange for her testimony against the other 3 girls and a guilty plea to the charge of criminal confinement. Townsend agreed to drop all of the other charges against Tony Lawrence.
Okay.
For this guilty plea, Lawrence would face 6 to 20 years behind bars. And where this, yes, it's a 20-year felony, y'all, but where the 6 comes in is they either agreed to a time frame for her to serve. So the prosecution, you can enter into a sentencing agreement where you say, okay, the minimum time you're going to be in jail is 6 up to 20, and then we let the judge decide.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
It happens.
Yep.
Otherwise, you also are at the mercy in some states of sentencing guidelines, which could make guidelines very low for a very assaultive crime, depending on a lot of mitigating and or circumstances. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
So do you have a question?
Nope.
Okay.
I was just breathing.
So it was going to be at the judge's discretion. This is what was agreed upon.
Right.
There's a time frame.
Which makes sense to me. Like they're like, we can make this deal of 6 to 20. It will be up to the judge. Yes. Okay. But however, in exchange, we will drop the other charges.
So people are angry.
They are.
Charnell, people are angry about the plea agreement. Townsend, and again, hate me if you will, but the prosecutor felt it was necessary in order to have an eyewitness for the state. Yeah. If these cases were going to go to trial, he had to have it. And I think he decided that she was the least culpable person. And based off of what I've heard, totally is guilty of murder, you guys, because she was there. She was an accessory. She was even before and after the fact, but she isn't the person that caused any of the physical injury.
I can see how he came to this decision.
We can hate it.
Yeah.
We can hate it.
No, I actually do understand it, and I think that he did good work here. Truly. And I know people are going to be angry about that, but guys, this testimony is huge.
Yep.
For the people who actually physically engaged
in the alternative, he could have not made any plea offers and they all could have gone to stand trial for murder, and none of them would have been able to testify against the other at any of the trials, because at that point in time, their rights come into effect. You have the right against to not self-incriminate when you're testifying in another trial. So there's no way with co-defendants that they could have had any of the other girls testify while they were facing the same charges.
Exactly.
It's just not possible.
You've got to think
So what
about
are you
that.
left with then?
Yep.
You're left with the evidence. You know there was a murder, but is there the possibility that a jury could decide based off of hearing somebody's story that they're not guilty of everything? Sure.
Yeah.
It could have happened.
It happens all the time. He is playing the legal chess game.
They are. They are. And honestly, this was checkmate for me.
Yeah.
Because then, unmoved by the state's new witness, which was, her.
Right.
Why am I drawing a blank all of a sudden? Tony. Loveless, Rippey, and Tackett repeatedly turned down offers from the state. In response, he files the death penalty specifications against Loveless and Tackett on July 13th of 1992 because, and this is why I like him, because I'll be goddamned if you're not going to accept a plea. If we're going to go to trial, I'm going to request everything I can on it. And he knew, Charnell, that he was pretty unlikely probably to get the death penalty for them because of their age, but he was still going to play his card. So he did. And he filed an intention to request the death penalty at sentencing if they're convicted. He also files another charge against them both at this point. He charges them with conspiracy to commit murder because that is another life offense. A conspiracy is treated the same as a regular murder charge. Yep. Because of Hope Rippey's age, he could not file death penalty specifications against her. So remember, Hope and Tony are 15. You can't request the death penalty even if they're tried as an adult unless they're 16.
Okay. Didn't know that.
So Tony and Hope were never going to be facing the death penalty anyway. Tony's the songbird, and he can't request it against Hope.
Right.
But he could against the 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yep.
On August 17th of 1992, Tony Lawrence was discovered slumped over in her cell, and she was rushed to a Memorial Hospital where it was determined that she had actually attempted to overdose on her antidepressant lorazepam. And then it was later learned she had been saving all of her prescribed daily doses for some time.
Okay, I was going to say, how'd she do that?
To make a suicide attempt.
Okay.
Let me talk in a minute about my feelings about this, but she's initially comatose. She remains in intensive care for 11 days before regaining consciousness. And then once she recovers, Judge Todd orders that she be transferred to LifeSpring Mental Health Facility in Jefferson for an eval, and she ends up remaining in custody of mental health officials until October 1992 when she was transferred back to jail. I get a bad vibe about this because I feel like she was trying to fucking get out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
She was trying to get out testifying with this suicide
yes, we
attempt.
needed her to stay alive. She needs to testify.
We need her to stay alive.
Yes.
We need her to. And just how fucking selfish are you at this point? She was mentally ill, you guys. I'm sorry. She was young. She was mentally ill. She attempted suicide and she had issues with this before.
Sure.
But what a cop-out.
Yeah. That's, I mean, I guess it doesn't surprise me, but I agree with you. She was absolutely trying to get out of testifying.
So September 21st, 1992, Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett, they decide, because death penalty's been put on the table, I think we're going to accept a plea agreement.
Oh, wow. Imagine that.
They both are going to plead at this point guilty to the murder and to torture, both of which should be, I consider them life offenses, of Shanda Sher, and also to arson and criminal confinement. In exchange, then the state's going to drop all the other charges and withdraw the death penalty specification request against them. The agreement also specified that they would ultimately allow the sentences for each of those charged to run concurrent. So at the same time. Okay. According to the book by Aphrodite Jones that I referenced at the beginning, The Cruel Sacrifice, please read it if you're interested in even more details in this case. Just 8 days after her plea agreement, Melinda apparently is having a great time in lockup. Let's just talk about how sociopathic she is. She gets caught having sex with an employee, a guard at the Clark County Jail.
What?
By the way, he subsequently resigns.
Oh, imagine that.
Well, you can be charged with criminal sexual conduct for having sex with a confined, incarcerated person, even if they're an adult and consenting.
Is she a witch and casting spells? My God.
And she's transferred to the Indiana Women's Prison. No charges were filed, by the way.
Wow.
On that guy. He just resigned. I don't think I have it in here, But I watched a interesting podcast where they talked a lot about the psychology of Melinda and some of her behaviors in jail. And one psychologist who evaluated her describes her as being overly and overtly sexual.
Sure.
To the point where when he was interviewing her, he described her as intentionally like pressing her chest, her cleavage together, and then leaning forward. And this gal that I watched present this, and I'm not going to give any judgment on this, she's irritated with the psychologist saying that he feels like, what kind of a weird old man are you overly sexualizing this young teenage girl? But I'm going to take an opposite stance on this and say that when you're dealing with this level of sociopathy, I believe that she entirely and incredibly would manipulate people to get her own way, including sexually. So it does not surprise me that, considering everything else we know about Melinda, that she wouldn't use her sex as a way to survive and to manipulate people.
Absolutely.
I don't like saying that as a feminist.
Right.
Because I don't ever want it to look like a look at the way she was dressed kind of thing.
No. But there are people who use those manipulation tactics. We're humans.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're capable of anything.
Yeah. She also was involved in sexual relationship with a inmate there as well, which I don't think would surprise anybody. In November of 1992, Tackett and Lovelace both attended separate plea agreement hearings where each of them admitted to their actions in the death of Shanda. Judge Todd set both of their sentencing hearings for December 14th. So they're on the same day. Then the following day, Hope Rippey's trial date was set for March 1st because she, at this point in time, is maintaining her innocence. Okay, Hope is still...
She doesn't have a plea deal like Tony did.
She was sold out by Tony. And the other two who are the ones that actually committed all the physical stuff. Hope's just like, I didn't do anything. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and give you the sentences and then explain some things for you and how they turn out.
This is why people wanted you to cover this, because
Probably.
the sentences are what enrage the public.
I know. So both Tackett and Lovelace, both of them, receive a sentence of 60 years, which was the max, by the way, for a quote-unquote life offense at that point in time in Indiana. So people are like, life, it's 60 years. That was their consideration for life. So 60 years in the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis.
So they should have been like 76, 77 when they got out.
So Tackett ends up being released, Lori does, in 2018 and serves probation for 1 year. Lovelace is released in September of 2019. So she spends another year after Tackett in jail. Hope Rippey does ultimately plead, and I'll explain some of that in a moment. She's also sentenced to 60 years.
Yeah.
And people have a hard time with this.
That's what's pissed people off, you guys.
They did suspend 10 years for mitigating circumstances, plus 10 years for medium supervision probation. So, yeah. On appeal, though, a judge reduces Hope Rippey's sentence to 35 years. Obviously felt that in terms of culpability, it was Tackett and Lovelace that deserved their 60 and Hope should only have spent the 35.
Right.
Tony, was allowed to plead guilty to the one count of criminal confinement, and that judge sentenced her to the maximum of 20 years.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be between 6 to 20, and the judge can make a decision.
He gave her 20.
So I'm going to back.
The two people that were not physically as culpable. It's hard.
But remember,
this is hard.
Hope was allegedly involved at the end there with the burning.
Oh, yeah.
She says Lori made her put the
that's true.
But again, you just did the squeezy bottle. She did spray that fucking Windex on her in the car to cause pain. So I don't even believe for a minute that she was made to put the gasoline on. No. I think it was a matter of, hey, grab the gasoline.
Correct.
And she did it.
Yep. But I'm just going into the, if, like you said, if we had to do a scale here.
Doesn't it suck that we're scaling culpability right now?
Yes, it does. It feels gross. But, oh my God. When you look in terms of the sentences.
A sentencing judge agreed to resentence to the 35 years. And we don't do these things willy-nilly. Something had to have been presented, and they used the terms mitigating circumstances. So let's talk a little bit. Now I jumped forward to sentencing. Now I'm going to jump back a little.
Okay.
December 14th of 1992 is when the sentencing hearings are occurring, both for Melinda and for Tackett, for Lori.
Yeah.
On the opening day of the sentencing hearing for Melinda, so there's television trucks everywhere. The Jefferson County Courthouse is just fucking surrounded by people, and the courtroom is packed. Family members, obviously, from both sides, but this has become a spectacle. There are reporters, there are onlookers. I don't want to, be mean to people because the public's curious and they want to know what's happening. But I think also realistically, you do have outraged citizens who want to know that justice is going to be done.
Of course. Of course.
So prosecutor Guy Townsend, he describes to the court in vivid detail the events of Cher's abduction, torture, and murder. And then over the next several days, Tony Lawrence, Lori Tackett, and some friends and acquaintances of Loveless are all called to testify against her because you can have them testify at the sentencing hearings. They've all pled.
Yeah.
There is no self-incrimination stopping them at this point.
Right. They have their...
Townsend also calls Don and Ralph Foley, the brothers that found her, Sheriff Shipley, Detective Henry, Sergeant Wells, Dr. George Nichols, who did the autopsy, and several members of Shanda Scher's family. And in the end, what was the most really heart-wrenching testimony was from Jackie, Shanda's mother.
Sure.
She started with a video. And it was a collection of photographs of Shanda at different ages. Wow. She's doing basically this PowerPoint, the tape's playing, and she's narrating photos as they're playing for the court.
She's humanizing her baby for the judge.
So she does her presentation, and then she reads a written statement to the court that went for 45 minutes. And I'm going to read some of it. It has obviously shattered all of our lives. I speak for all of us when I say I don't think there's anything worse than burying your own child. I can't control my emotions most of the time, and I cry because I want my baby back. I want her home for Christmas, but I can't have her. This year, I didn't get to buy Shanda any presents. There are no presents for her under my tree. Melinda Loveless has cheated me out of being with my daughter during this life. It is my wish for you, Melinda, that you live your life with memories of her screams and the sight of her burned and mutilated body. I'm not sure who you love most in life, Melinda, whether it be your mother or your father, but I want you to imagine them in the trunk of that car. I want you to imagine the person you love the most begging and screaming for their life. I want you to imagine that person being the person lying on the ground who's burned and mutilated. Maybe then, and I doubt this seriously, you could feel a small portion of the pain our family feels. The proper punishment for Melinda would be to place her in a cell with pictures of Shanda's burned body and force her to continually listen to a tape of my daughter screaming like she did that night. I hope and pray you remember these words for the rest of your life. May you rot in hell.
Oof.
Love this woman.
Me too.
Because she said all the things that you would want to say and that people are thinking.
Yep. A verbal ass kicking.
Lori Tackett's sentencing hearing began on December 28th and was almost identical to Melinda's. Townsend more or less recounted the same events, and the witnesses varied just a little bit. And in addition, both Loveless and Lawrence testified as part of their plea agreement.
Okay.
On the morning of January 4th, 1993, Melinda Loveless stood in front of Judge Todd awaiting her sentence. He cited all of the factors involved in the case, including the gruesome nature of the crime and the age, her being 12, the victim. Then he paused and he sentenced Loveless to 60 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed under the plea agreement. You still have time to turn your life around and do something good and useful with your life after prison, Todd said. Because Loveless at this point, Melinda is bawling. She's weeping uncontrollably in court. But not because she took a life.
Nope.
She's feeling sorry for herself. Shanda Scher does not have the chance to do that. I hope you take advantage of the opportunity you've been given with the 60 years. Mm-hmm. She's sobbing uncontrollably as she's led away, and then Lori Tackett gets brought in. So the judge cites the factors again in the case and passes down the identical sentence. Tackett is stone-faced, doesn't cry, doesn't flinch during the proceedings. And this just goes to us again.
Exactly why she's the scariest.
I think she's the scariest, even though she wasn't the one that had the relationship or wanted the girl dead.
No.
She just knew she was going to kill somebody.
Yeah. And she also is so scary, she doesn't even have remorse for herself.
Right.
I mean, Loveless at least was crying for herself.
Yeah, exactly, right? At least you can feel bad for your future that you've ruined.
Right.
So after the sentencing, just 2 days after the sentencing, Shanda's parents filed a $1 billion lawsuit against all four girls. This is great. The suit's filed after a Louisville television station reported that Lori Tackett was trying to sell her story to a movie production company.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And that Loveless was also considering some various offers she received. And this is just the vomit of humankind, that people would reach out to them and say, hey, you want to sell your story about how you murdered that young girl?
Yep.
fuck you guys.
Yep.
Like,
absolutely.
it makes me sick.
Yep.
And that's why we have laws on the books, too, that you can't profit as the perpetrator from these cases, but still makes you sick.
Yep.
Shira's parents never expected to collect any of that money. Let's be clear.
Right.
They wanted to discourage the girls from profiting at their daughter's expense. So you file $1 billion lawsuit, any money you bitches make off of this, we're going to take every cent of it.
Yes.
Jackie Vaught gives a interview to the Courier Journal on that day, and she says, "It's appalling to think that they could profit from killing Shanda, but I can't say I was shocked to hear about their plans. I know the horrible things these girls are capable of." Good for you, Jackie.
Yeah.
Call them out and continue to. So the circuit court judge in Clark County, Daniel Donahue, he agrees with Jackie, and he issues a temporary injunction blocking the girls from making any deals to sell the story. And then Indiana law, it mandated, it wasn't, and then, despite his injunction, Indiana law mandated that any money a felon received for publication of broadcast rights be deposited in the Violent Crime Victims Fund. So it would be unlikely that they'd ever make any profit off of it. And if they did, it would go into this fund.
Yes.
Okay, so just so people feel a little bit better about it. Tony's sentencing hearing began on January 19th of 1993. The hearing
1 year and 9 days later.
Yep. And she's the songbird.
Uh-huh.
During her hearing, which is only 2 hours, investigators praised Lawrence for her cooperation, and several teachers, family members, and friends testified on her behalf. She was granted permission by the court to read a statement of her own to the Scherer family. So she does read a statement.
I don't think I would want to hear it, Megan.
Well, I'm going to read it to you.
No, I mean if I was her family.
I know.
I didn't mean on the podcast.
Right. Your reaction as a parent and the victim's mom here and dad, just think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry about your little girl. Do you want to clean the vomit off my chin? I know that you can never forgive me for being with those girls on January 10th and 11th.
Being with those girls.
But
no accountability.
But I would like to explain some things to you.
Nope, I don't. I would walk out. If I was Jackie, I'm gone out of the courtroom.
I think Jackie is so smart and intelligent and just eloquent that she's going to sit there because her responses are going to be beautiful. I mean, she already basically put the smack down on Loveless at hers.
She's great with the words.
I do very much feel remorse for your daughter. I've been locked up for 10 months, and that time has been a living hell. I've had nightmares where I wake up screaming and can't stop to think for a second without seeing Shanda's burned body or hearing her screams.
Good.
I was terrified of Melinda and Lori.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was going to come in at some point in time.
Melinda had a knife and was going to kill Shanda. I know I should be punished, but in my heart, seeing Shanda tortured and burned was punishment enough.
Oh my God.
I didn't get help because I was scared they would kill me too.
Okay.
That night and morning will live visibly in my mind for the rest of my life. I know you have the right to hate me. I wish there was something I could do for you, but all I can say is how very sorry I am. Following her statement, Jackie Vaught took the stand and gave a reply. I sat through 3 sentencing hearings and had to look and listen to my daughter's murderers day after day while they lied and put on acts worthy of an Oscar. I see attorneys trying to convince everyone that these girls are victims. The victim here is Shanda Renee Scherer and her family and friends. Tony could have saved my daughter's life that night at any given time. She chose not to.
Yep.
Period.
Exactly.
Point blank.
Yes. End of story.
When they convened the next morning for the sentence to be imposed, Judge Todd sentenced her to serve 20 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed by law. He clearly was not impressed with her statements.
Nope.
She broke down and cried.
You mean her lack of accountability in her statements?
Yep.
Yeah, and made it about her?
Correct.
I wake up after nightmares, and I've been locked up for 10 months.
Yeah, well, it's going to get longer.
Fuck you.
So she breaks down and cries. She at least showed some remorse, like you said, for herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hope Rippey, who is the holdout here, guys, she finally accepts a plea deal as well. And at her sentencing hearing, which began on January 1st, 1993, they ended up, I don't really know why, they ended up moving her sentencing at the request of the defense to South Bend, Indiana, and held it at the St. Joseph Superior Courthouse with a Judge Jordan presiding. I'm not sure why. And okay. I did some research, but I'm not sure if it was because of, threats, or if there was some type of valid motion that she couldn't get a fair sentencing, which I find hard to believe, but irrespective, it's moved. Venue is. At the beginning of the hearing, Hope Rippey makes a statement maintaining that her claim that her only action against Shanda was pouring the gasoline on her body. So she admits it. But remember, she says she was made to. Mm-hmm. Following her statement, the defense, her attorneys, called the psychologist Michael Sheehan to the stand. The doctor, Sheehan, says Hope is immature and acted solely under the domination of Melinda Loveless and Lori Tackett. But testimony from Tony Lawrence and Loveless and Tackett, who've all been sentenced, painted a little bit of a different picture of Hope. The prosecution called witnesses from the previous 3 proceedings, and the last to testify was Jackie Vogt, who we know already is going to kill any type of a statement. She's amazing. Mm-hmm. And once again, she shows the video of her daughter to the court, and she becomes angry because Hope holds her head down. Like she's not going to watch. She has her head down and won't watch the video. Judge Jordan orders Hope Rippey to look up and watch the presentation.
Good.
Right?
Buddy.
Do you just feel some vindication here for this? Good, because a judge should do that.
Absolutely.
I like that a benchmate anywhere in the U.S. did that because that's what should have happened here. You 100%. Don't get to hide your head.
No, you don't. Nope.
Her statement during this sentencing, Jackie's, was, imagine how you would feel if someone did to your niece what you did to our child, because her sister has had a baby at this point.
Okay.
Hope says, you cannot know the pain we have felt. There is no greater pain than losing a child. They recess. Judge Jordan comes back and he sentences Hope to the maximum sentence of 60 years, but suspends 10 years for mitigating circumstances. Mm-hmm. And he orders that she be placed on probation for 10 years at the time of her release. Mm-hmm. Then Judge Jordan made her statement to the court. I like it. Hope Rippey had choices. There were avenues of escape, ways to help herself, ways to help Shanda. She poured the gasoline so no one would get caught, even though she knew it would kill her.
Yep.
Her lack of mercy, of tender courage, is a horrifying lesson to us all. So Loveless is the ringleader,
God,
right?
When you think about it, it was the smoke inhalation that killed her. She's the one that poured the gasoline.
Isn't that interesting to think of?
When you really get down to brass tacks.
Yep. That was the ultimate cause of death. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Melinda, who's the one who's angry with Shanda, she's the ringleader behind the murder, naturally receives a longer sentence than the 2 younger girls. And Tackett gets the same sentence. And a lot of people questioned why. Like, why did she receive that longer sentence also? I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Lori Tackett, okay? So as we've indicated, we know she grew up in this strict religious household and she's rebelling. And apparently at one point in time, she when she started to engage in the occult, she shaved her head and stuff too.
Okay.
She's got some shit
She's got
loose.
a lot of interest. She's got some shit loose.
She's got some shit loose.
Yeah. She's been the scariest one of all, honestly.
In an interview, she says, quote unquote, I didn't know Shanda at all. I didn't go into that evening knowing anything was going to happen, wanting anything to happen. I didn't. Peer pressure. That's all it was. It spiraled out of control way too fast. It's something that should have never happened.
Yeah, it is. But what's scary is that you took such a huge part in it for a girl you did not know and had no ties to or any motive for. Truly. Ugh.
She gets interviewed on the Dr. Phil special that I referred to, and they referred to her as the convicted killer, which is perfect. Mm-hmm. Explains why she thinks people kill. And she said,
oh, God.
My opinion is that they kill to feel superior or high on the victim's fear, and they're thirsty for the spill of blood.
Oh, so that's how you felt.
Yep.
Cool.
Another excerpt taken from that Dr. Phil show about Shanda and Lori's, about Lori Tackett's role in the murder. So Dr. Phil asks Lori's mom and sister if they agreed with the statement that she made. Mm-hmm. And they both said yes. Her mom said that her daughter, Lori Tackett, believed it was her destiny that she would murder someone in cold blood and spend the rest of her life in prison. And her prediction was partly true.
Like that's what her soul lesson was.
Yeah,
here
apparently.
To learn. And she was born knowing
she fulfilled her destiny.
Yeah.
She did have that major hand in killing Shanda, and of course was released from prison in January of 2018. So Charnell, all of these girls are free now. Right now, all these girls are free.
I just want you guys all to absorb that. Consider the sentences that they got.
Yes.
And they all are free.
So
this was the early 90s. What, 20 years?
So here's it. December 14th of 2000, Tony Lawrence, least culpable, please know I'm using air quotes, was released from prison after serving 9 years.
Okay.
So she served 9 years of the 20 year. She could have received anywhere from 6 to 20, and she served 9. Hope Rippey appealed her sentence, which we know was reduced to 35 years by a judge.
Right.
But then she was released on April 28th, 2006. So she served, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15
years. Okay.
Lori Tackett, sorry, my mental math is off. Lori Tackett was released on January 11th, 2018 on the 26th anniversary of Shanda's murder. And then, there's enough to make you want to vomit. And then Melinda Lovelace was released on September 5th, 2019 after serving 27 years in prison. So Lori served between 25 and 26 years, and Melinda served 27 years in prison.
How did these women ever get out?
So
this is horrific. When you're on a parole board, Megan, and you're reading the details of what they did, is it because of their ages?
Let's get into it.
At the time of the crime,
Let's get into it a little bit. So on November 3rd of 2004, a judge, Jenny Manier, who's a judge in the Indiana Superior Court, she reduced Hope Rippey's prison sentence from 50 to 35. She's the one that did that.
Okay.
And according to reports, she felt that Rippey was remorseful and likely to be productive in society. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which I know is what you have to weigh.
We do. And I know you guys don't like this, but we have to look at propensity and what would it be likely that people would reoffend? Mm-hmm. Okay. Are they rehabilitatable?
Mm-hmm. I know.
So she did take into account a couple of things when making her decision.
Are they like trying to say this was mob mentality? And so as long as they're not all back together, then they probably aren't going to reoffend.
I've heard a lot of people refer to this as bystander effect, but this was people participating. So I don't really think it fits within the legal definition of bystander.
Right.
No offense to you podcasters that called it that. I just don't think you understand.
Right.
It's not a bystander effect.
That's why I said mob mentality.
That is way, way closer.
Yeah.
So she took into account as the mitigating circumstances that Rippey had obtained a bachelor's degree from Ball State University General Studies program for inmates, and had spent some time talking to various youth groups. And once they affirmed the decision to reduce the time, it became that Hope's earliest possible release date would be 2006 instead of 2017. So Jackie Vogt has been very adamant that she's, and pissed off, by the way, just in general about this decision. And she says she's taken every class, because this was taken into consideration, remember, as mitigating. She goes, she's gotten every degree she can with my tax dollars, I might add.
Right.
She's done everything she can to get out early, but it's just wrong. That's a quote.
Right.
She said the only thing that she wanted, and she said this on Dr. Phil too. Hope Rippey came on herself to Dr. Phil after her release, and there was a confrontation with Shanda's mom and sister, surviving sister, and she's, I think, attempting to be remorseful. And I'm sure that it was a terrible spot for her to be in. Not that she didn't deserve to be in a terrible spot where she doesn't know how to apologize. Watching this video, it's very uncomfortable. And then Jackie, in all of her eloquence again, basically says, the only thing that you could have done to make this better is just serve your whole sentence.
Right.
That's it.
For sure.
You deserve to be in jail.
You're 20 years.
Yes.
That's it.
So difficult.
Oh, no. She was 35, right? I'm sorry.
35.
Sorry, my bad.
35.
Tony was 20.
Yes,
exactly. At the very least.
To all of the girls, though.
Yes.
To all of the girls, she has said that the only thing she ever asked was that they serve their sentence because they deserved it at a minimum. So this is hard. So they find out that Hope's going to be released. Shanda's family's still in mourning. May 8th of 2005, which just for the record is that? Oh no, I was going to say that's one of my daughter's birthdays. That was 2003 though. Shanda's father, who was 52 at the time, Stephen, he dies.
Oh God.
And the cause of death had not been publicly released, but it's been reported that he was buried in the same cemetery with his daughter. On the freaking Dr. Phil show, when they confront Amanda Heverin, remember the girlfriend here that's kind of implemented, she says, just kind of crassly, that she does feel bad that Steve Scherer, Shanda's dad, drank himself to death.
Oh my God.
And there have been multiple allegations or conversations that he did turn to alcohol, to addiction.
I don't
and
blame
that
him.
led to a death.
My God, how do you cope in life knowing this is how your baby?
You don't.
No.
You don't. So Jackie says after, she feels like, and I'm going to say this because she deserves to have her opinion told, Rippey's early release was made possible because the St. Joseph County prosecutor failed to do his job. She was adamant that they could have prevented Rippey's sentence reduction if they would have chosen to oppose the sentence modification motion back in 2004. And I don't necessarily disagree because I was happy with how things happened at the beginning, but then there's a motion that's filed to reduce her sentence, and a different judge made that decision, and she feels like they could have and did not oppose the modification.
Yeah.
So she has a right to that opinion.
She absolutely does.
And her quote for that was, "She poured gasoline on my 12-year-old child and burned her alive, but she's an asset to society and has strong convictions and is ethical. I don't get it. I just don't get it."
And remember, it was the smoke inhalation that was
the
documented as the cause of death, people.
In October of 2007, I'm going to go back, Loveless's attorney, Mark Small, requests a hearing to argue for his client's release. He said that Melinda Loveless had been, quote unquote, profoundly retarded by childhood abuse. That was an appropriate term then, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But he's
for
saying
sure.
that she was basically
But also she
impaired
wasn't.
in her development because of sexual abuse.
Yeah, I get that, but I don't think that qualifies as being profoundly. I don't, because what did you say earlier?
You're so angry.
I am. I'm so angry. What did you say earlier? That there are many people who go through that and worse that are not murderers.
You got it. He also argued that she had not been represented competently by counsel during his sentencing.
How many times can we use that as a freaking excuse?
Which caused her to accept a plea bargain in the face of exaggerated claims about her chances of receiving the death penalty. So he's basically saying that mean old prosecutor, when we wouldn't take a plea, added the death penalty, and that caused her to plead. And you know, right, sir, that is probably exactly freaking true and not a violation of any kind.
No. And it's not
one of those things where you say she was threatened. No, sir, it was a promise.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't that is not inadequate representation. That is, how do I defend a murderer?
Right.
There's only so many things we can go with.
He also argued some legalities that I find very interesting. And he argued that because she was, Melinda Loveless was only 16 years old when she signed the plea agreement, that she was too young to enter into a contract in the state of Indiana without consent from a parent or guardian, which had not been obtained. And if the judge accepted those arguments, she could have been retried or released outright.
Oh my gosh.
Now, remember, you guys, she was charged as an adult.
I was just going to say, she was, remember that waiver that was signed over to charge her as an adult?
And when you are charged as an adult, you are treated as an adult,
correct,
including with civil contract law
in
a criminal offense.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. The details
but,
of the case.
Good job, Attorney Small, for any of you that are mad at him, because that's what defense attorneys are paid to do. And he was dealing with a teenager who was facing a significant sentence, and people have had very strong opinions about life sentences. And even though this wasn't life, it was 60 years. And there's been a lot of laws and rules that have changed that find that that's cruel and unusual punishment, by the way.
Seriously. Know what is cruel and unusual?
Being burned alive.
Thank you.
On January 8th of 2008, her request was rejected by Circuit Court Judge Ted Todd.
Good, Ted Todd. Even though that you've got two first names as your first and last name, I'm still okay with it.
She would, however, be eligible for parole in 15 years. Thus maintaining the original guilty plea. And I'm sorry if I didn't mention that before, but part of the plea with the agreement to the 60 years was that they were eligible for parole. There wasn't parole wouldn't have been taken off the table, which is actually not a bad thing in terms of how I am for an appeal, because it would have survived a cruel and unusual punishment argument. Because having not been denied parole means that they weren't effectively given life sentences as children.
Okay. All right.
Just let me put it in perspective before you blow up, okay?
Yes, because I was getting ready.
I know you were. I saw it. She's playing with the crystals over here obsessively.
They have been my emotional support fidgets this entire episode.
I will also note that after Judge Todd ruled, she appealed to the Indiana Court of Appeals, and they also denied her appeal, finding that Judge Todd's ruling was appropriate. And Small, the attorney, stated that he would seek to have jurisdiction over the case removed to the Indiana Supreme Court, which is your right. So why would Melinda Loveless, 16 years of age, mastermind such a graphically remorseless, brutal murder? Over jealousy? Are there mitigating circumstances? I think we've already pretty much decided that there weren't. Jackie Vogt, in a 2012 interview, said some really interesting things about Melinda.
Okay.
She said, I had many times said, if you want to see as close to a person who has absolutely nothing inside of them, look into Melinda's eyes, because there's nothing there. She had a difficult childhood. Dad had allegedly sexually abused her.
Yep, a lot of people do.
Her siblings also, and experts opined that they have attributed to her anger and those type of things. He was later arrested and convicted. And I think I briefly touch on that in just a moment.
Okay.
Just out of interest. One of the videos that people can go and watch, and I highly suggest if you want to see something, go to YouTube and click in this case and about Loveless specifically. She did do well in prison, Melinda, and she found some measure of escape from that violence and abuse. So there's an Indiana program called ICAN, the Indiana Canine Assistance Network. And it's been helping Loveless, among other people, behind bars. And basically what they do is they train puppies to be assistance dogs for disabled people. And one of the dog breeders who supplied a puppy to in Indiana to her was a burn victim, like Shanda was. And you can see him talking to her and interviewing her in this, where she actually seems like a real person. And he is honestly, truly a burn victim. So the breeder, he convinces Jackie, Shanda's mom, to watch a video of Melinda Loveless all grown up and to see what she does in prison for the program. And
Working with animals instead of people.
Yes. But Jackie, God, what an amazing woman she is in terms of what she's had to deal with. She says, I was really taken aback. I saw someone almost reborn. She was sincere. She was compassionate. I like to think the ICAN program allows her to have something in her life that she can show love back to, and that there's never been betrayal on either side to.
Right, because it's an animal, not a human.
One of the other things that she said, which I didn't quote, but I remember it very specifically, and it just sticks in my head. She also said, Melinda now has the opportunity to raise something that she loves and do all the good things for it to make it a beautiful thing, this animal, and then have it taken away from her.
Right.
At the end.
At about 12 to 14 years, right?
To be given to somebody else because they're raising service animals.
That's right. And then because she's still incarcerated.
That's it. It's not that it would die. Yeah. It's that she liked that she was raising something that she would have to intentionally give up, something that she loved. Not that it's even comparable, but to at least give her a little bit of that feeling of what it's like to lose something you love that you've treated beautifully through the years.
When you think about karma.
Yep. So if we want to talk about karma and somebody who deserves everything good in the world, let's talk about Jackie Moore.
Yeah.
She was so impressed with what was happening and what she saw. She donated a puppy named Angel. This puppy's so cute, by the way, for Loveless to train in prison.
Think about that, y'all.
Oh my God,
Think
right?
about
the selflessness.
That.
She said that she did it in order to honor her little girl who she thinks about every day. And she also agreed to donate a dog every year in Shanda's memory to the program. And Melinda was to be assigned to train those dogs.
Yep.
For Shanda's mom, this was a chance for something good to come out of the evil that took her daughter. In a quote, she states, "It is my choice to make. She's my child. If you don't let good things come from bad things, nothing gets better. And I know what my child would want. My child would want this." Melinda, for her part at that point, did feel that Shanda's mom was helping her to overcome her past. She said, "She helped me to heal, forgive, and grow. Whether she wanted that or not, she did a good thing. I would thank her. I couldn't thank her enough. Angel is in good hands, and I'm doing it for Shanda, and I'm doing it for her." Now, this is before she was released. And so I'll know these are all good things that happened, but I want to make it clear that Jackie and her family are still pissed that they were released.
Absolutely.
So even though she did this good thing, and Melinda really did make some changes that perhaps make her so that she's not dangerous to society, I hope, because they fucking released her.
Yeah.
So you have to hope that they've determined that the public isn't at risk.
Yeah.
But all they wanted was for them to serve their time. They couldn't say it enough.
Of course.
Due to the sexual abuse allegations, because I do want to touch on this because they were so specifically horrible against Melinda and potentially her sisters, Larry Loveless was arrested and he was charged with rape, sodomy, and sexual battery.
Okay.
He waited 2 years for trial before most of the charges were dismissed because they were past the statute of limitations.
Oh my God.
But Larry killed himself in 1998 by jumping into traffic in St. Louis, Missouri.
Wow.
And there are people there that out here in the world that feel that this wouldn't have happened, none of this, if Melinda wouldn't have had the childhood that she has. Sure. But I still call bullshit.
Yeah, because I think of what we've said over and over and over. Well, right.
Steve Scherer, Shanda's dad, there was, as I indicated, a couple of sources, and one of them was valid enough that I'm going to make the statement on air, and I apologize to her family if this is not how they feel, but it was that he did suffer from alcoholism after Shanda was killed, and he ended up dying from his addiction at age 53 in 2005. Shanda's mom and her stepmom believed that Steve actually died of a broken heart after losing her daughter, and I think both of those are true.
I was just going to say, because one leads to the other, right, Megan?
Correct.
I mean...
So we talked about the Dr. Phil thing. So Jackie and Shanda's sister, they confronted Hope on that Dr. Phil show in 2011. Freaking watch it if you want. You know I don't always like watching this kind of stuff, especially I love Dateline. They give great information. But if it's a case I'm covering, I don't love watching it because I think that it skews podcasters sometimes.
Well, yes, it's edited very specifically.
Jackie very specifically said to Hope, the only thing you could have done is serve your sentence. And none of the girls actually served their entire sentence they were given. When Amanda Havron appeared on the show, she was there to defend herself against Jackie's allegations that she molested Shanda. Jackie stated on the show she believes Amanda is responsible for Shanda's death.
Yeah.
Not that she could be criminally charged with anything, although there might be some arguments.
Those letters went to her first where Loveless was saying she was going to kill her, and she did not turn that over to anyone.
4 teenage girls, 3 of whom didn't even know Shanda.
Yep.
Kidnapped her, beat her, strangled, stabbed, sodomized, and tortured a 12-year-old girl.
And burned.
Absolutely. Tony and Hope were away from Lori and Melinda for hours, and they didn't seek help for Shanda.
Yep.
Then Hope pours gasoline on her so Lori could light her on fire. And only after the brutal murder did Tony come forward. Lori was deeply disturbed and obsessed with the occult and killing someone. Melinda was so enraged with jealousy and anger that she targeted a young girl whom her girlfriend had an interest in. And somehow, they're all walking free today with their lives to live. And this is how Jackie and Shanda's sister feel.
Yeah.
Shanda's mom has been showing, as I've indicated, I couldn't shown enough that she's been so strong through all of this. She makes television appearances to tell her story. She explains that she understands that Melinda had this horrific childhood, and she believes that abuse and violence in the home molded Melinda into the monster that she became. But Melinda chose to act on it. Yeah. She does advocate. She's a huge advocate against child abuse and seeks to see the positive in life, which she believes Shanda would have wanted. And basically, Shanda Shearer, in her opinion, was a child taken away too soon by a group of mean girls. I'm going to leave you with information that's probably not super helpful, but I wanted to know where people ended up.
Oh, okay.
Jackie is still very much outspoken, and you can look her up all the time.
Can we just pause for a second and acknowledge that since 1992, this mother has had to continuously give interviews, not had to, but she has chosen to be that strong advocate.
She has.
Not only for her daughter, but then also for prevention of this happening again.
Yes.
Over and over. This was the rest of her life, y'all.
It was.
Ugh. Okay, carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know how helpful this is to anybody, but Tony, she ends up changing her name. She works for a Madison-based...
I would think all of them would have to change their names.
Yeah, you're going to hear that. She works for a Madison-based trucking company. She keeps a low profile. Allegedly, she has children, and she spends time with her dad. Hope Rippey goes by Anna now. She lives in the Indianapolis area. She married her girlfriend and reportedly still lives, again, in Indiana, in that Indianapolis area. Lori, who goes by Mary... which was her legal name. Her last known whereabouts were in Indiana, but that's all that's known about her at this point. And then Melinda changed her name, and basically she lives in Indiana, but completely stays out of the public eye and just isn't on any type of social media.
Can't imagine why.
Yep. So it comes down to, in this case, are there mitigating factors enough that these girls should be out walking around? Should the sentences have been reduced? Were they still a danger to society? To our knowledge, none of them have reoffended. And that's where we are. Okay. That's the case of Shanda Shearer.
But can I play devil's advocate here? Because I know you've explained as a judge that you have to look at when someone's up for parole, are they a danger to society? Are they likely to reoffend? I get that. But can we also just look at the justice side of it of you're right, maybe they wouldn't reoffend, but they haven't served their time. They have not had the punishment that was given to them for this crime. And that is where I get pissed off. And I know, of course, her family, the victim's family does as well. At any victim. We're not just talking Chandra. I mean, any victim's family, right? But like, I get it. Are they going to reoffend? Yeah, you know what? Probably not. Given their tender ages and the circumstances, blah, 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 we hope that they don't. We can't say for certain that they
mean
won't.
Girl mentality, manipulation, peer pressure.
Yep.
Are those even real things?
But at the end of the day, they didn't serve the time that they were given. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me as a human in society that they are less likely to reoffend. It's just the principle of the fact that they didn't serve the time that they should have, that they were given for the severity of this crime.
Yes. Yeah, Charnell, that's the whole thing with this. And I think that's why people have requested this case so much and just want opinions. I don't know if I've given any opinion that's different than many other people.
You've given a lot of very thoughtful information and that others definitely haven't. I've heard a couple of podcasts on this, and it wasn't done nearly as eloquently as you did it.
I got concerned about some of the opinions out there, podcasters or otherwise, who actually do believe that there were mitigating circumstances in the case.
Sure, because they probably don't understand what those words actually mean. Well, in the true legal depths of them.
Yeah, and we use in my line of work mitigating circumstances all the time.
Yeah,
and again, you may not like it, but there are reasons that there will be certain sentences given out. None of it actually truly mitigates that there was a life that was taken,
right?
And that it was senseless and needless and just really shouldn't have happened,
right?
And the only other thing I can add to that is, like you said before, think of all of the people that you and I know or that we've dealt with that have mental illness that have been through childhood trauma who don't turn around and commit crimes like this. So just keep that in mind in the future.
Millions of them.
Correct.
It's in the millions, guys. So
you want me to bathe you?
I do. I also will tell the audience that as a coping mechanism, I have to show this to you. So I was using our crystal penises Well, I've come up with my color palette that I'm going to redo my living room in. Look at how nice those all go together.
It is lovely.
That's beautiful. It also matches my coffee cup this morning. So that was nice.
It is. It's great.
I'm going to keep these crystals out so that I can color match them to what my new living room is going to be.
I'm going to go along with your headlines from before and stick with some funny headlines, but this is one that's taken from bestlifeonline.com, which is one we don't use very often.
Okay.
I like that this one, forecasters call for weather on Monday.
Cool. I was hoping weather would happen.
That's right. Cows lose their job as milk prices drop.
Oh, no.
Yeah. How about miracle cure kills fifth patient?
No.
Don't think it was a cure. And unfortunately,
or a miracle.
Man accused of killing lawyer receives a new attorney.
Oh, really? Is it because his had a hard time representing him after that murder?
He did have a hard time.
From the grave?
I think we've read this before, but they believe that the state population is due to double by 2040. Babies are to blame.
Oh, I do remember that one. Yeah. Babies are to blame for the doubling of the population.
Babies are to blame.
Those fucking babies.
Oh, I have read this before, but I'm going to read it again.
Yeah, and it might have been on a Brain Bath Only episode, so maybe the regular
Police arrest everyone on February 22nd.
I love that one.
Yeah.
Police just arrest everyone.
Yes. How about this title? This just says Thursday is canceled. This had to do with a Donald Trump thing announcing that Thursdays have been fired.
But
Thursdays have been canceled.
Imagine if we went from Wednesday to Friday. I am down for that.
Right.
Maybe we should cancel Thursdays. Actually, let's cancel Mondays.
Well, while we're talking about Thursdays, this was I think this Route 1A or something, bridge closure date, Thursday or October. A day of the week or a month?
Or a month.
State detour plan draws criticism is the under headline. The secondary.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. It might be on Thursday. Or in October.
I also want to make sure that you know, in case this article headline doesn't tell you, that most earthquake damage is caused by shaking.
Oh, no kidding?
Yes.
Oh, that's weird.
Or federal agents raid gun shop, find weapons.
You don't say. Whoa.
And my personal favorite is safety meeting ends in accident. Yep, this was an EMT safety meeting that occurred, and apparently it was reported that somebody was jaywalking across the street when they were struck by a pickup during this. Yes, yep, absolutely.
Oh, that's awful.
How about a Muddy Creek problem? It's too muddy. That was the problem.
Oh,
yeah.
You know what, you Muddy Creek?
And as we've seen before, in many cases, murderer says detective ruined his reputation.
You know, how damn those detectives. How dare them ruin murderers' reputations.
How dare you? How dare you?
Thank you for those. Oh, you guys, this was a hard one. I know sometimes you all request even the most common, commonly
well-known and requested cases.
Yes.
I'm picky about the ones I take because the ones that are so well known, I almost don't know if I can do them justice. This one I took a stab at.
No, you did this amazing justice. I do think that people are going to appreciate the perspectives that were given and explanations. And oh boy, this was a very, very hard one for me. So I know it was all of you guys too, but fantastic job, my friend. Thank you all for hanging into it with us for 2 episodes. And until next time,
keep it curious.
Keep listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.